All right, week one is in the books. Time for power rankings for week one. Um, so these are like early season power rankings are probably like the most boring thing, like power rankings wise, because draft rankings are kind of fun because you're just like it's purely vibes based, right? You don't know if anyone's good or bad. Nobody has been injured, since the draft probably. But then like weeks one and two, it's boring because you don't know what's a fluke or like you haven't really seen enough to know teams are good and bad. So hopefully I can get through the teams quick and show off my rankings. But actually, I was looking at something else that I think might be interesting to look at instead of just rambling on even longer about teams that we just don't know anything about, and that's a little bit more vibe coding analysis. So let's take a look here. I'm playing around more and more with Cursor, which is going to steal all of our jobs. It's insane. Um, and what I decided to do for this is using the Sleeper API. I'm going back through and pulling the history of the league for as long as they've been on Sleeper anyway. And I decided I wanted to make like historic power rankings. So not like for one season, but like across the entire history of the league. Like what teams have been the highest performing. So I won't spend too much time on this, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me like trying to reassure myself that I am good at fantasy football, despite just the one championship. Using math, if I just keep throwing enough metrics at it, then surely I can tell myself I'm the best. But this is pretty cool. Like for me, not really writing almost any of this code. So yeah, let's maybe take a look at some of these numbers, and I don't know, everyone can see how they compare basically to the average. Maybe I'll compare this. It would be cool. I'm thinking of this like on the fly now, taking some of these numbers and then lining it up with like keepers basically and keeper performance, because there was so much debate around, are your teams good because you have good keepers and it's just luck, or like what's the relationship? I don't know. That's kind of hard, right? Because you're going to keep players if they're good, so you're going to have a good team. But how much of even keeping a keeper is like luck or skill to select them and then keep them? Because there are teams that have picked really good players and then not kept them. Cough, cough, Kanowski, right? So, maybe that'll be like for a future one. But for this one, let's maybe just jump through some of these stats here that I had asked Cursor to throw together, and we'll try to learn something. So I asked it basically like, I want to put together a power ranking using this approach, and it gave this power score here, and I went and looked through like basically what this means actually. These are not like points fantasy wise. This is just like the formula that it came up with, and honestly, I'm like a big fan of how it put it together. So we basically everything in here is built off of really like two metrics, or one metric maybe. One, it's just the average score. So even across seasons and scoring changes, we all play by the same rules. So again, like your average score isn't even indicative of what you're going to score today. But since we all play by the same rules every year, still like the average should be higher for the better teams and lower for the worst teams. So that's just like the mean, right? And then the other kind of like stat we're looking at here is the coefficient of variation. This is like the one advanced like math formula that I know just from doing enough like nerdy ass fantasy football stuff. And it's actually a very like simple like formula or whatever. It's just the average of a data set over the standard deviation of that data set, and it gives you this factor that we'll look at here. But the reason that the coefficient of variation is so awesome is that it factors in obviously like the mean, right, the average score of some set of numbers, but then putting it over the standard deviation says, don't just tell me which one's higher on average, but also factor in basically the the distribution of those scores, right, of those numbers. Because in fantasy football, it's not just about scoring the most points, it's about scoring the most points most often, right? You want to win individual weeks. That's the name of the game, right? That's how you be good. So it's not enough just to like have a high average if you're super volatile. You also want to, be very, very consistent with also scoring those high numbers. So that's basically, we're just looking at like a few different charts here of kind of what that looks like. So it just gives this kind of like power score, which is that average over 1 plus that coefficient of variation metric. And this is kind of like the resulting ranks that it came out with. So you can kind of see where you fall there. Then it just basically gives the same numbers in different charts. Again, Cursor just did all of this on the fly. Fucking crazy. So we can see here basically your consistency score is down here on the bottom. And you can see, Logan and John, extremely wild in terms of like how consistently they score. All of our scores are actually probably a little bit more consistent than this variation number shows, just because there have been scoring changes, right, over the years. So really the groupings are a little bit tighter, but I think, the scaling should basically work out since we're, again, all playing by the same rules. But we can see, you want to be up and to the left on this chart. So if you see your name down and to the right, not great. Some more consistency rankings, candlestick graphs. And then I thought this was a cool one that Cursor just came up with on its own, like a high performance frequency. So of course you want like every week to be very consistent. But I think even, who is it? It's one of the ESPN guys, Bill Barnwell or somebody, one of their fantasy analysts maybe, puts out a consistency rating like article every year. So not even looking at just the average or even the standard deviation of how players score on a week-to-week basis, but you're actually looking at like how many of their games are they scoring within the top, tier of fantasy. So not just the average and not just the consistency. So you can have a little bit more volatility as long as you're still scoring, in this case, like in the top 25% or the top 10%, right? So this is a way to even like, I don't know, just look at the same numbers in a few different ways, whether you value just highest average, whether you value consistency, whether you value like this sort of thing. The percentage of weeks that you're in the top 25 or the top 4 teams essentially. Top 3 teams, I guess, top 25%. So yeah, we can see through here. I thought this was interesting just looking at some of these numbers. I don't know, this really shouldn't be shocking to anybody. Hopefully not anyway. The average scores, line up kind of, nothing too crazy. Consistency scores get a little bit more interesting to see which teams are a little bit more consistent and a little bit less consistent. Again, this is over multiple seasons, so even though Carlo was murdering all of us last year, he had 4 other seasons to factor in. Here's our little power score that I talked about, and then here's the percentage of times that your team has finished in the top 25%, and then just the total number of, the amount of times you've finished in the top just above average. So even if we look at like me and Scotty here, he is more consistent than me on average with a lower coefficient of variation. I score in the top 3 more often than he does, even though I'm a little bit more volatile, but then he scores above average more often than I do. Like this is a cool way to break it down, cool way to look at things. So yeah, we can, dogpile on Logan and John, who have actually by this, formula, have even a lower power score than Trond. Although John is averaging a higher score than Trond, but he's just too volatile. I think John has called that out too. But yeah, this is pretty cool. Playing around with this stuff. So now let's get into the teams. Again here, I did add a little bit of a swing in here. You can see over here on the left side the draft power rankings and then movement based on week one. It's always a struggle. Like I said, these early weeks, you want to reward owners who have good teams, but I do think, 1 week, obviously bias. I think my draft rankings are probably still a little more meaningful than just how teams scored in week one. That being said, I'm not too proud to say like there are things that I'm sure I got wrong. There's also a few injuries that we can look at too that are probably going to impact some positioning one way or another. So I'll click through these quickly. Like I said, doesn't need to be super drawn out for week one, just because like we don't even know how real any of this is. A lot of the stuff that I did where we're seeing a lot of movement, I tried to look at basically like how sticky do I think these high scores are. So even like if we look at Travis in the first spot, he didn't get the high score or anything, but basically what I was looking at is like of the scores that did happen, how likely do I think they are to happen again, and who do I think was like underperforming or overperforming, and we'll see that I guess on a couple of these teams. So anyway, let's start at the top here. I'm not going to spend too much time. Logan, I didn't think his team was very good. None of these players really popped off. I think Dak will get better, but nothing crazy. We'll see. Drake London has an injury. My team kind of delivered what I thought they would. There might be a little bit of room for improvement, but nothing too crazy in terms of like super high or super low scores. I've already dropped Brock Purdy. Then we'll look at Travis here. Yeah, so this is what I mean by like how sticky do I think these scores are. Like I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to average 6 points a game. I think George Pickens is going to get better, but nobody, whether that's Hurts. I don't think Javonte Williams is going to score 2 touchdowns a game, but I don't think this is like they're obviously sticking with him in the backfield in Dallas, just at least based on the usage we've seen. So, I think he's going to end up being decent still. Chase Brown could easily score more than this every week. Basically, like, yeah, I think there's only room to grow and not much room to shrink based on these scores. Caleb's team, I ended up knocking him down. He like very much underperformed. I think Burrow will be better, but I think a lot of these guys, there wasn't as much of a fluke, I guess. I don't know. Now I'm looking back at it. Maybe I should give Caleb a higher score. The Jaylen Warren pick is coming in clutch. I think he's gonna own that Steelers backfield. Again, we're just kind of like zooming through these today. I think Carl got knocked. I should probably knock Carl down even farther if he's gonna lose C-Mac for a while. But then he also has these other great pickups. Jamar is he won his matchup and Jamar basically did nothing. Egbuka might end up being a total steal here. I think I saw Roshan Johnson got injured or something, or is set out of practice today. I think Swift's numbers are going to go up too. But then John, he stays at the bottom because even with a 30-pointer from Patty and another 30-pointer from Derrick Henry, like I'm just not seeing, he lost Xavier Worthy. I'm just not seeing like where Tyreek Hill I saw is under investigation for domestic violence. RIP to him. And nobody like waiting to come off the bench. Like I don't know. These names are getting to me. Mark Andrews, AJ Brown. Like this team should be better, and maybe it will be. I'm just like not seeing, your good players scored high, and that's as much as you can hope for, and you didn't crack 80 points. Like it's just hard to see, where the 20 to 30 points are going to come from every week to keep you like super competitive. So John's still staying down the list for now. Tron's team makes a huge jump. This is kind of the opposite. These are all solid scores, but I don't think that these are like fluky, right? There wasn't a 30 or 40 point quarterback on Tron's team. Saquon didn't go for, 3 touchdowns or something. These are all just kind of like stock, solid stat lines for these players. There looks like quite a few touchdowns scored. Like most of these players got a touchdown. I could even see J-Mo and Tyrone Tracy like basically upping these scores. These are pretty low for these guys. So yeah, I just think Tron's team, like, I don't know where they're going to fall off, basically, other than just like normal touchdown regression. Cramsey's team is kind of the opposite. I mean, I guess I actually ended up bumping him up one just because Logan's team kind of crashed out, but like even a little bit harder. But I mean, he lost Tank Bigsby in a trade to the Eagles, who was already like a very shaky RB2/flex. McLaurin didn't do anything. Very mids receiver there. Charbonnet, maybe that's like he got 12 carries. We'll see if Ken Walker's injured. Not too much crazy there, I guess. Carlo's team, I mean, there's probably room for regression in a positive direction. T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, Pacheco, these are all like surprisingly low scores, but then he'd lost Kittle for, it sounds like, multiple weeks. So yeah, just like I need to see something. You know, he drops a couple spots. I need to see something happen there before I push him back up the board. And then Mark, high score this week. Good job. Led by that insane Bills-Ravens game. Yeah, I mean, solid scores across the board. Again, nothing's like crazy jumping out to me. Aaron Jones kind of saved his day with that touchdown catch. Would have been kind of pedestrian otherwise, but hey, he got in there when it counted. And then Scotty's team, this is another one. I didn't realize Caleb. Oh, I guess, yeah, I think that was Caleb's first career rushing touchdown, so that's pretty cool. Ken Walker, this one's scary, of course. We'll see what happens if he's injured or if he keeps losing touches. He was actually out-carried by Charbonnet. I didn't realize that either. I totally whiffed on Zay Flowers. I like kind of dogged this pick in the draft rankings, but he had a fantastic game. So, you know, shit on me. This last flex spot is still a bit of a concern, in my opinion. Cooper Kupp doesn't get a lot of attention here, and I don't know how much that's going to change. He was relying here on Matthew Golden, who did not get much attention either. He's got a couple backup running backs, and two banged up wide receivers who now have a banged up quarterback in Brock Purdy. So, I mean, for the most part, this is still a great team. I don't think Scotty has anything to worry about right now. But between Ken Walker and this flex spot and not a lot of options on the bench, there probably is some waiver wire work to be done here for Scotty. And then K-Man's team, yeah, I think this was, I don't know, I want to bump everybody up now. 94 points. Bo Nix has probably one of his down games, just based on expectations anyway. So, like, I could easily see that being, over 100. Another guy who totally shit on my draft feedback, Tyler Warren, immediately comes in and starts getting attention in the Colts offense. Omari Hampton was kind of bad, but I think they'll still stick with him rather than turning it over to Najee. Nothing crazy here either. I'm sure these ranks will continue to kind of like move around, but don't want to keep diving into like speculation until we get another week or two under our belts. So I'll leave it at that for now. Hit me up if you think some other like analysis could be cool to make an AI vibe code for us to look at numbers. Until next week, later boys.